welcome to the deep dive. We live in a world that really celebrates self-promotion and confidence. It's everywhere, right? Social media, work. But all this pushing to believe in ourselves, it kind of raises a big question, doesn't it? Where exactly is the line between, healthy self-esteem and something else, like narcissism? So our mission today, tailored just for you, is to peel back those layers. We want to separate the real psychology from all the pop culture stuff, the myths that fly around. Think of this as your shortcut to getting properly clued up on this.
Yeah, and getting this distinction right, it's not just like an interesting thought experiment. It's actually pretty crucial for your own self-awareness, right? And for spotting patterns in other people, navigating relationships. It makes a difference. So we're going to really dive deep into what defines these traits, beyond the simple labels.
Okay, first things first. When we talk about personality, the words we use, they really matter. So let's nail down some clear definitions. What are we actually talking about? Let's start with confidence. What is that at its core? Well, it's basically a realistic belief in your own abilities. It's grounded in competence and healthy self-worth, knowing what you can do, knowing your limits too, and just being okay with yourself.
Right. And that's where narcissism immediately starts to look different. It's way more than just loving yourself, like people say. Psychologically, the DSM-5, that's the manual, defines Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD, as this pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy. It's a specific clinical thing, but here's a really vital point. Not all narcissistic behavior means someone has NPD. There's a big difference between clinical narcissism, the disorder, and just having narcissistic traits. I mean, we can all be a bit arrogant sometimes, right? Yeah. Or self-focused. Those are traits. It crosses over into a disorder when those traits completely dominate the personality, when they consistently mess up relationships and, genuinely get in the way of how someone functions day to day.
Oh, okay. So it's not just a bad mood or even someone having a really strong ego. It's this whole pattern that kind of takes over.
Exactly. It's pervasive.
That difference traits versus the disorder and confidence versus narcissism that feels like the key to unlocking the rest of this. All right, so we have the basic definitions, but how do psychologists, actually tell them apart in practice? What are the markers they look for? I assume this is based on solid research.
Oh, absolutely. We're drawing from work in places like the Journal of Personality Disorders, APA analyses, that kind of thing. And we can really see the contrast if we look at a few key areas. Take self-view. Someone who's confident, they usually have a pretty accurate, realistic picture of themselves, strengths, weaknesses, the whole deal.
Okay.
A narcissist, their self-view is inflated, often wildly exaggerated. It's built on this fantasy of being superior, not really on reality.
Wow. Okay.
Then there's how they handle feedback. Confidence means you're generally open to growth, right? You can hear criticism, maybe learn something, your ego's okay with it. A narcissist, they tend to get really defensive or even hostile. Feedback feels like an attack, like a threat to that whole fragile self-image they've built up.
Right, that makes sense.
And then there's empathy. Huge difference here. A confident person usually has it. It's there, it guides how they interact.
And the narcissist?
Often it's just missing, or it's only cognitive, like they understand emotions intellectually but don't really feel them for others. And that ties into relationships. Confident people, they tend to have connections that are reciprocal, respectful.
Give and take?
Exactly. Narcissists, their relationships are often exploitative or shallow, really just about serving their own needs. Finally, think about validation. Where does it come from?
Yeah.
Confident person, mostly internal, self-driven. A narcissist needs it constantly from the outside. They crave admiration to prop themselves up. So if you pull all that together, the main takeaway is pretty clear, isn't it? Confidence tends to lift people up, yourself and others. It helps build real connections. Narcissism, though, it often works by controlling, manipulating, or putting others down to make the self feel bigger.
Like a zero-sum game. For them to win, someone else has to lose.
Kind of, yeah. That's often how it plays out.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Makes you think, doesn't it? About interactions you've seen or maybe even been part of. Okay, let's unpack this a bit more because it gets even trickier, right? I understand psychologists actually talk about different types of narcissism.
Okay.
It's not all the same.
That's exactly right. It's not monolithic. The first type people usually think of is grandiose narcissism. These are the folks who are overtly arrogant, dominant, entitled.
The classic stereotype.
Pretty much. They can seem really charismatic, charming at first. They draw people in. That's the grandiose type. But then there's vulnerable narcissism. This is quite different on the surface. These individuals are hypersensitive. They can seem really insecure, actually. very defensive.
So not boastful.
Not necessarily, no. They might feel like they're always the victim, always misunderstood. But underneath, the core narcissistic traits are still there. And what's really crucial, something researchers like Pincus have highlighted, is that both types, grandiose and vulnerable, often stem from a deep, deep insecurity. It's a mask, not genuine confidence.
Wow. So that confident-seeming shell, or even the victim narrative, it's often covering up something really fragile underneath.
Very often, yes. That's a key insight.
That completely changes how you might perceive someone, doesn't it?
Right.
It's not always a loud one in the room. Which makes it even more interesting how casually we use the word narcissist now, especially, online and everywhere. It feels like it's just thrown around constantly.
Oh, absolutely. It's become almost like a default insult, hasn't it? Think about it. Your ex posts a lot of gym selfies. Narcissist. Your boss has a really strong opinion you disagree with. Narcissist.
Yeah, or someone who's just good at commanding attention when they speak.
Exactly. These everyday behaviors get lumped under this really serious label. And that's, well, it's not helpful. It's often just wrong. The problem with pathologizing normal stuff like that is, first, it creates massive confusion about what narcissism actually is. And second, it can actually be kind of harmful,
Yeah.
Sticking a serious psychological label on someone who might just be a bit annoying or maybe even just genuinely confident.
That's such a critical point. It's about seeing past the surface, distinguishing real self-assurance from, I guess, a performance of ego.
Right.
And we should remember, confidence itself looks different on different people. It can be quiet, it can be bold. But the thing that's always there, the consistent thread, is that it's rooted in respect. Respect for yourself, yes, but also respect for others. Narcissism often lacks that second part. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. How do we take all this and actually use it? How can we spot these differences in everyday life? Can you give us some, real-world examples?
Yeah, let's make it practical. Think about common situations. How someone takes criticism, for instance.
Okay.
A confident person, generally, can see it as feedback. Maybe it stings a little.
Yeah.
But they can use it as a tool to learn, to grow.
Right.
A narcissist, any criticism often feels like a personal attack. They'll get defensive, maybe lash out, or dismiss it entirely.
What about success? Like seeing other people succeed?
Good one. A confident person can usually celebrate others' success. Genuinely. They're happy for them, or at least not threatened.
And the narcissist?
Often feels threatened. Someone else's success feels like it diminishes their own standing. They might get envious, try to minimize the other person's achievement, or even steal the spotlight.
Okay, one more. Mistakes. We all make them.
Absolutely. A confident person can typically admit mistakes. They can take responsibility, apologize if needed, and try to fix it.
And the contrast.
A narcissist will very often blame others. It's almost never their fault. They'll deflect, make excuses, find a scapegoat. Accountability is difficult for them.
Those are really clear examples. It's definitely worth thinking about those scenarios in your own experiences, in your own relationships. So this leads to the big question, the one everyone asks. It's kind of controversial, too. Can narcissists actually change?
It's complicated. The research suggests that narcissistic traits, those individual bits of behavior, they can sometimes become less intense. Well, maybe through consistent feedback over time or dedicated therapy. Sometimes big life events like a major failure, a serious illness, a big loss can force some level of introspection and lead to shifts.
But what about the full disorder, NPD?
That's much tougher. Clinical NPD is considered really deeply ingrained, very resistant to change. And the biggest hurdle, most people with NPD genuinely don't see that they have a problem.
They think the problem is everyone else.
Pretty much. They truly believe they're superior or that others are just wrong or too sensitive or trying to undermine them. So getting them to even want to change, let alone do the incredibly hard work involved, it's a massive challenge.
Is therapy ever effective then?
There are therapies that show some promise, things like schema therapy, some specific types of CBT, psychodynamic approaches. They can help manage some aspects, maybe improve relationships slightly. But progress, if it happens, is usually very, very slow. And it requires a level of commitment the person often just doesn't have.
So what does this all mean for us then, when we think about the possibility of change? Are we mostly looking at managing the situation, or can real deep change happen?
I think it means we need realistic expectations. For traits, maybe some mellowing is possible with effort and insight. For full NPD, profound fundamental change is, well, it's rare. Extremely challenging. Because that core lack of self-awareness and that resistance to seeing their own part in problems is just so central to the disorder itself.
Right, okay. So as we wrap this up, let's bring it back to where we started, this whole question. Narcissism or confidence?
Yeah, when you boil it all down, the real difference lies in things like intent, empathy, and self-awareness. What's driving the behavior? How does it impact others? Does the person see themselves realistically? And maybe the simplest way to think about it is this. Confidence lifts you up, sure, but it often lifts others up too. It allows for real connection. Narcissism fundamentally tends to diminish others in order to lift the self up. It creates that zero-sum dynamic we talked about.
That's a really clear takeaway. Confidence builds. Narcissism often takes away. So here's a final thought for you to chew on. In this world that tells us constantly, believe in yourself, build your brand, project confidence, maybe let's remember this. Real, authentic confidence often has an element of humility. It doesn't actually need to shout. It doesn't need to feel superior by making someone else feel small. True confidence is quieter, more grounded. Something to think about as you observe the world, and maybe yourself too.
Yeah.